Philip Whalen, a beat poet. Philip Whalen was a friend of the major figures of the Beat generation. Whalen is also considered to be one of the important and venturing writers behind the San Francisco poetry renaissance in the 1950s. Philip's work is different from other beat writing because his different tone and self-depreciating humor.
As a writer from the West during the Beat era, Whalen certainly shared many of the concerns of other Beat writers and their religions. He shared concern with sexual freedom, the environment, and drug exploitation. Dictionary of Literary Biography essayist Paul Christensen concludes that Whalen thought of an art as an act of personal delight and as a consultation to solitude. It was in keeping with his image of writing that he could devote himself to his work without making it serve any other end but its own self-fulfillment. David Carradine writes, Whalen, on the contrary, is not concerned with revolutions and social panaceas. If he sees the big man at all, he sees him in the small situation, tripping over a pebble on his journey to deliver a rose. Out of themes that are often seemingly mundane and prosaic, he creates poetry of significance because his vision is peculiarly his own, and because the clarity of his intelligence is capable of grasping and arresting meaning in seemingly ephemeral and unimportant subjects. Christensen sees the unique vision as a particular strength of Whalen's work. Whalen has managed to espouse the religious principles of Zen Buddhism without renouncing the world around him, retaining a humorous, whimsical balance in his poems, and mixing the pleasures of California life with contemplation in such a way as to persuade readers that the flesh and spirit may be enjoyed together in the fulfillment of one's life.
Whalen was born in 1923 in Portland, Oregon. He grew up in a small Columbia River town and attended public schools. Whalen started writing poetry very young. Whalen wanted to pursue a medical career, but sadly his family could not afford college. So Whalen took jobs as a laborer in an airplane factory and at the local shipyards. In 1943, Whalen was drafted into the United States Army. While in the Army, Whalen continued to spend a lot of time reading and writing. After his discharge in 1946, Whalen returned to Portland and enrolled at Reed College, where he put much hard work toward determined to become an accomplished writer.
Perhaps more important to Whalen's development, he befriended Lew Welch and Gary Snyder in the late 1940s. Whalen then moved into a rooming house with them in 1950. There they grew and encouraged one another as writers.
Whalen moved to San Francisco in the autumn of 1955 at Snyder invitation. Whalen read at the historic and vital Sixth Gallery reading on October 19, 1955, which Allen Ginsberg debuted his work, How. His reading was crucial in the development of the Beat movement. Whalen met and became friends with Allen Ginsberg, Jack Kerouac, Neal Cassady, Gregory Corso, and other important Beat writers. This sparked Philip Whalen's poet career.
Whalen began the transition to a more known poet with the poem, If You're So Smart, Why Ain't You Rich? A work that liberated him from his past conventions and suggested new directions for him to follow. This is an excerpt from You're So Smart, Why Ain't You Rich? I need everything else, anything else, desperately, but I have nothing, shall have nothing, but this, immediate, inescapable, and invaluable. No one can afford this, being made here and now.
The year 1960 saw publication of two major Whalen's works, Like I Say and Memoirs of an Interglacial Age. As a recipient of numerous prestigious awards and grants, Whalen could have easily gotten into the nation's top university writing programs. Instead, the poet became an ordained Zen monk in 1973 and spent decades in Zen centers of San Francisco and New Mexico.
Christensen writes, this phase of Whalen's career brings us far from the original Beat years of the 1950s, when Whalen was a character of much beat writing, as well as a colleague of its inner circles and a stubbornly individual figure in his own literary realm.
Whalen continued to write, and in 1985 he was awarded the Morton Darwin Zabel Award for demonstrating progressive, original, and experimental tendencies in his poetry. Tom Clark states that Whalen's output may eventually stand as the #1 production of the whole strain of West Coast poetry, which weds naturalism and Zen style reflection into something like a pure regional style.
Christensen writes, when the mid-century is understood, the poems of Whalen will take on greater importance in its history as having offered a counterfoil, a balancing satirical response to the airier flights of projective and beat poetry. 4C. I wanted to bring you this Jap iris, orchid white and yellow blazons, but I couldn't face carrying it down the street, afraid everyone would laugh, and now they're dying of my cowardice. Abstract beauty in the garden, in my hand, in the street it is a sign, a whole procession of ithyphallic satires, through a town whose people like to believe. I was made like Jesus, out of love, my daddy was a spook. The upright flower would scare them. What's shot? They think, from the big flesh cannon will decay. Not being there, I can't say that being born is a chance. To learn, to love, and to save each other from ourselves. Live ignorance rots us worse than any grave. And lacking the courage to tell you, I'm here, such as I am. I need you, and you need me. Planning to give you this flower instead, intending it to mean this is really I, tall, slender, perfectly formed, is uglier than their holy fantasies. Worse to look at than my own gross shape. After all this fuss about flowers, I walked out, just to walk, not going to see you. I had nothing to bring. This poem wasn't finished. Didn't they say what was on my mind? I'd given up. I saw bushes of crimson rhododendron, sparkling wet, beside the hospital walk. I had to see you. If you were out, I'd leave these flowers. Even if I couldn't write or speak, at least I broke and stole that branch with love.